I had just signed the lease for my first real apartment. Not a studio tucked into a noisy street, not a temporary sublet. I mean a proper place that I could call mine. The kind of apartment that felt like a symbol of independence. The kind of space where no one would ever knock on my door unannounced or criticize the way I lived. I had been dreaming about this moment for years, saving every extra dollar from work, carefully choosing the neighborhood, picturing exactly how I'd arrange everything. And now it was finally real. Moving day was chaotic, as expected, but there was a strange thrill in it. Every cardboard box I unpacked felt like a small victory. The walls were bare, the floors squeaked just a little, and the smell of fresh paint lingered in the air. I could finally breathe without someone hovering over me, telling me I wasn't doing something the right way. I even allowed myself to imagine how different life could be if I didn't have to constantly tiptoe around my family's expectations. Yet, even in my excitement, I couldn't help but think about Grandpa. My grandfather had always been my favorite part of family gatherings, the one person who actually listened, who didn't lecture or pressure me. He had a quiet wisdom, a warmth that made you feel safe, even when everything else in the household felt tense and suffocating. I remembered the call I had made the day I got the keys. "Grandpa, I got the apartment," I said, my voice full of pride. He laughed, a soft, knowing laugh that always made me feel like he saw right through to my soul. "That's wonderful," he said, but then he paused. "So, when are you inviting me over to see it?" I chuckled. "You're coming over next weekend. I'll cook, I promise." "Good," he said, and then something in his tone made me pause. "I'm curious. How's the place?" I laughed again, thinking he just wanted details. "It's amazing. Bigger than I expected, sunny windows, the neighbors are nice. Everything is perfect." He hummed softly on the other end, a little too softly. Then he said something that made me freeze. "You know, I've always wondered who really owns these things in our family." I blinked at my unpacked boxes, unsure if I'd heard him right. What do you mean?" "Nothing," he said, chuckling lightly. "I'll see it with my own eyes soon enough." I laughed it off, but a tiny seed of unease had been planted. Grandpa never asked questions like that unless there was more beneath the surface. I tried to shake it off, attributing it to his odd sense of humor. And then just as I was starting to feel proud and happy about my little victory, the phone buzzed again. It was a group text from my mom, my dad, and my younger brother. "Congrats on the apartment. Can we come by tomorrow?" I stared at my phone. Tomorrow? They didn't even know my exact address yet, and they were already showing up. I tried to ignore it at first, telling myself it would be fine, they were just curious. But deep down, a small nagging voice whispered, "They don't just want to see your apartment. They want something else." I couldn't know then what that something else was. Not yet. All I knew was that my first taste of freedom was about to get complicated in a way I hadn't anticipated. And now it was finally real. The next day, I spent the morning tidying up, arranging the apartment just enough to make it feel like home, but not so much that it screamed, "Look at me, I finally made it." I was nervous, though mostly about keeping my patience. My mom had a way of turning even small visits into interrogations. And my brother, well, he had perfected the art of entitlement. When the doorbell rang, my stomach twisted. I opened it to see my mom standing there with a wide, expectant smile, my dad lingering behind her like a shadow, and my brother leaning against the doorframe as if he owned the place. "Surprise!" my mom chirped. "We thought we'd see the new place for ourselves." I forced a smile. "Oh, okay, come in." As they stepped inside, I noticed immediately how my mom's eyes scanned everything, the furniture, the walls, even the little knickknacks I had unpacked. She wasn't impressed. She was evaluating, judging, weighing whether this apartment met some invisible standard she had in her mind. Nice, but it feels a little small, don't you think? In the kitchen, did you get new cabinets or are those the old ones? I wanted to tell her it was none of her business, but I just nodded. They're new. I chose them myself. My brother, meanwhile, had already claimed the biggest chair in the living room. This is kind of cramped, he said loudly, like he was announcing a fact to the entire neighborhood. You sure you're going to be comfortable here? I bit my tongue. I didn't want to start an argument on day one. I'll be fine, I said. My dad didn't say much, just shuffled around, pretending to examine the shelves. Occasionally, he'd glance at my mom as if waiting for her to approve his reactions. It was exhausting, like being caught in the middle of some invisible tug of war. Then, just as I thought the visit might pass without incident, my mom's tone shifted. So, you're really living here all alone? No roommates? No friends? She raised her eyebrows, smiling sweetly, but I could see the calculation behind it. Yes, I said. I like having my own space. She leaned closer. It's brave of you, but don't you think it's a bit risky? What if something happens or someone tries to take advantage? I froze. That phrasing sounded off, too pointed. I'll manage, I said, a little defensively. And then came the moment I'll never forget. My grandpa had called that morning just before they arrived, and I hadn't expected him to be on my mind again. But now, standing there, with my family practically inspecting my life, I suddenly remembered his words. Who really owns these things in our family? The question echoed in my mind like a warning I couldn't quite decipher. Was my mom already thinking along the same lines? Was my brother? I tried to shake the feeling, but it clung stubbornly to me. By the time they left, after what felt like hours of subtle digs and awkward commentary, I was drained. And worse, I couldn't shake the sense that the visit wasn't just about seeing my apartment. Something had shifted. I didn't realize it yet, but this was the first thread of a much larger web, and it was already starting to tighten around me. And just as I collapsed onto my couch, my phone buzzed again. A message from Grandpa. Be careful. They notice more than you think. I'll explain when I see you. I stared at it, heart pounding. I had no idea what he meant. The next few days were strange. I tried to immerse myself in unpacking and decorating, convincing myself that my new apartment was my sanctuary. But I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling from my family's visit. Every time I thought about my mom's comments or my brother's smirk, a knot formed in my stomach. Then, one evening, I noticed something that made my heart skip a beat. I had left my laptop on the counter while making coffee, and when I came back from the kitchen, it wasn't where I had left it. My heart pounded as I scanned the room. Nothing seemed disturbed, but I couldn't shake the unease. And then it happened. I overheard something that made my stomach twist. I had stepped out briefly to get a coffee from the corner store, and as I came back, I saw my younger brother leaning against the hallway outside my apartment. He wasn't supposed to be there. When he saw me, he dropped his casual smile and stepped back like nothing had happened. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice sharp. "Oh, just checking the neighborhood," he said, too casually, "making sure you're settled." I didn't believe him, and deep down, I knew Grandpa's cryptic warnings were coming true. Someone was watching, someone was scheming, and I had no idea what their endgame was. Later that night, I sat on my couch, staring at the letter Grandpa had given me. I could almost hear his voice. Be careful who you trust. I didn't yet understand why, but a part of me already knew the first real betrayal was closer than I imagined. And it wasn't going to come from some stranger. It was going to come from someone I called family. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my apartment, my family, and Grandpa's subtle warnings. Something was building, like a storm waiting to break. I just didn't know when or how devastating it would be. And I had no idea that by the next week, my carefully crafted independence would be tested in a way I couldn't have predicted. The confrontation started the moment my mom stepped through my door the following weekend. She had that same calculated smile on her face, the one that always made me feel like I was being measured, judged, weighed, and found lacking. My brother trailed behind her, grinning like he had already won some invisible game. "Hi, sweetie," my mom said, placing her bag on the counter as if she owned the place. "I hope you don't mind us stopping by again. We just wanted to see how everything is going." I forced a smile. "Of course. Come in." From the start, it felt different. There was an edge to her tone, something beneath the surface that made my skin prickle. My brother immediately took his usual spot on the couch, sprawling like he had every right to be there. "So, about your apartment," my mom began, sitting down in the dining chair I had bought for myself. "It's really nice, but I was thinking maybe you could let us use it sometimes. Just for short visits, family dinners, things like that." I froze. "Use it? What do you mean?" "Oh, don't be silly," she said lightly. "I just think it would be nice if you shared. Family." I felt my chest tighten. This wasn't about family. This was about control. I had worked hard for this apartment, every cent, every decision, and now they were trying to make it theirs, subtly, without even asking. My brother leaned forward, a smirk playing on his lips. "Yeah, and, it's big enough for all of us. It'd be a shame not to enjoy it." I wanted to scream, to tell them both exactly what I thought, but I held back. Instead, I said carefully, "I'm happy to have visitors occasionally, but this is my home, my space." Mom's smile didn't falter, but her eyes hardened. "Sweetie, we're not asking. You're family. Families share. Don't make this difficult." That night, I sat on my couch replaying their words over and over. The brazen way they tried to claim my independence made me feel violated, even though nothing had been physically taken. And somewhere in the back of my mind, Grandpa's warning echoed, "Be careful who you trust." I realized then that this wasn't just about the apartment. This was about me asserting my independence in a family that had never learned to respect boundaries. And the worst part? I could feel that my little world, the one I had built so carefully, was about to collide with the truth I wasn't ready for. Something Grandpa had hinted at, but wouldn't fully reveal until the timing was right. I didn't yet know what that truth was, but I knew it was coming, and I knew it was going to change everything. A few days after that visit, I couldn't stop thinking about my mom's words and my brother's smirk. The apartment that felt like my sanctuary was starting to feel like a trap. Something was off, and I knew it wasn't just in my head. Then one evening, while organizing some boxes, I found an old envelope tucked behind a row of books on the shelf. It was addressed to me, but the handwriting was unfamiliar, slightly shaky, older. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were papers detailing something I had never known, a hidden clause in my grandfather's will that mentioned my apartment, or rather, the property that had been in the family for decades. I read and reread the documents, my heart pounding. The paper suggested that the apartment wasn't entirely mine in the eyes of the family trust. There was a legal loophole buried in fine print that allowed family members to stake a claim if they believed I was not properly maintaining the property, or if they could prove it was part of the family legacy. I couldn't believe it. My mom and brother weren't just nosy. They were already thinking ahead, scheming ways to take advantage of this clause. The realization hit me like a punch to the stomach. Everything Grandpa had hinted at was true. I called him immediately, hands trembling. "Grandpa, I found the papers," I whispered. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then he spoke, calm and measured. "I was hoping you'd find them yourself. Now you understand why I asked about the apartment." "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I demanded, my voice cracking. "Why make me discover it this way?" "Because," he said gently, "you needed to see it for yourself, to understand who truly watches over you and who doesn't." I sank onto my couch, the weight of his words pressing down on me. Everything made sense now. The visits, the intrusive questions, my brother's smirk, my mom's manipulations. They weren't just concerned about me. They were calculating, planning, waiting for the right moment to claim what they believed they could take. That night, I sat alone, staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction, every subtle dig, every sly smile. My independence, the very thing I had worked so hard to achieve, was under threat. And I realized something terrifying. I couldn't trust anyone in my family, not my mom, not my brother, not even my dad. The only person I could count on was Grandpa, and even he had his own way of guiding me, always one step ahead. Little did I know the worst betrayal was yet to come, one that would cut deeper than any letter, any subtle manipulation, any calculated glance. And when it happened, I would finally understand the true cost of asserting independence in a family that had never truly accepted it. It happened sooner than I expected. One evening, I returned from work to find my brother casually lounging on my couch, flipping through a magazine that wasn't mine. My heart sunk immediately. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, my voice sharp. "Oh, hey, just checking out the place. Mom thought I should see how you're living. Family interest." I could feel my anger rising. Family interest? You mean spying on me? Scheming to take what's mine? He laughed, a little too loudly, as if the truth was a joke. "Don't be dramatic. It's all part of keeping things fair." Fair. The word echoed in my mind, bitter and hollow. That's when it hit me. He wasn't just interested in the apartment. He wanted control. He wanted leverage. And my mom had been guiding him the whole time. I decided I had to confront them both. That evening, I called my mom over, pretending everything was normal. When she arrived, I led her straight to the living room where my brother was waiting, smug and confident. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the anger boiling inside me. "I know what's going on. The apartment, the will, the trust. Everything." Mom's smile faltered for a moment, then returned, colder this time. "What are you implying?" she asked, her tone deceptively calm. "I'm saying I know you're planning to stake a claim on my apartment, and I won't let it happen. I worked for this. I earned this." My brother snorted. "Oh, come on. You think this is just about money? It's about family tradition. Mom and I are just helping you see reality." I felt a wave of disbelief. Reality? Their reality was a manipulation, a theft disguised as concern. My chest tightened, and for the first time, I truly felt the depth of their betrayal. Then Grandpa's words echoed in my mind. "Be careful who you trust." I realized he had known all along. He had been watching, guiding, waiting for me to see their true colors myself. And now I understood. The lesson wasn't just about property, it was about recognizing who in your family actually has your back and who doesn't. I stood my ground, my voice firm. This ends now. No one takes what I've earned. Not you, not anyone. Mom's eyes narrowed and my brother's smirk faltered. They realized I wasn't the same person they had tried to manipulate. I was no longer the compliant daughter or the passive sister. I was someone who had discovered the truth and wasn't afraid to fight for herself. That night, as they left my apartment, I felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and relief. The confrontation had been painful, but it was necessary. I had finally seen the real faces of the people I called family. And somewhere deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. The storm wasn't over. Not yet. But for the first time, I also knew I could survive it. After that confrontation, the apartment felt different. Every corner, every box, every little thing I had worked so hard to arrange suddenly seemed fragile, as if the walls themselves could betray me. I sat on my couch for hours, staring at the floor, replaying every word, every glance, every subtle manipulation my mom and brother had used. I realized how deeply their betrayal cut. It wasn't just about money or property, it was about trust. It was about the fact that the people who were supposed to love and support me had been plotting against me, treating my hard work as theirs to claim. I cried that night, not out of weakness, but out of sheer exhaustion and heartbreak. I thought about my parents, about the moments I had hoped they would stand by me, and the crushing disappointment of realizing that my dad, as much as I loved him, was too passive to stop any of it. And then there was Grandpa. I called him, needing his voice, his calm presence, something to anchor me. "I saw everything," he said softly. "I knew what they were planning. That's why I warned you. I wanted you to see it yourself, so you'd be ready." "Ready?" I asked, my voice trembling. I feel shattered. I don't know if I can trust anyone anymore. He was quiet for a moment. Trust isn't given blindly. It's earned. And right now, you're learning a very important lesson about who truly cares for you and who only cares about what you have. I thought about the letter he had left me, about the cryptic questions he had asked. I realized he had been preparing me all along, not to fight my family, but to understand them, to recognize the danger before it fully reached me. I spent the next few days reflecting, trying to process everything. I wrote in my journal, paced my apartment, and even slept on the floor one night just to feel grounded. I thought about the independence I had fought so hard for, and how easily it could have been taken from me if I hadn't been alert. It was painful, yes, and I mourned the family I had thought I knew, the family that I had loved and trusted. But through that pain, a spark of determination began to grow. I realized I didn't have to let them win. I didn't have to let their greed and manipulation define my life. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew Grandpa was right. The storm wasn't over,